Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it is the returning Alasdair Gold. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Hope you are too. Yeah, refreshed, well, kind of refreshed, but nice to come back to a very good Spurs performance as well. It was one of those where, Villa at Spurs has been a bit of a kind of a bogey game in a way in recent seasons. I was thinking, I'm going to come back and my first pod back is going to be talking about like a really disappointing defeat. And actually, completely opposite, a really entertaining and thoroughly deserved victory in the end for Spurs as well. So yeah, I couldn't have really picked a better podcast to come back to.
Yeah, 4-1 win at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday afternoon. Morgan Rogers opening the scoring for Villa midway inside the first half. Then Spurs just bang on it in the second half. Brennan Johnson equalising 4 minutes after the break. Dominic Solanke getting a well-earned double. And James Madison with absolute beauty of a free kick in stoppage time. Villa must be sick of the sight of Spurs, especially in second halves, because, this one on Sunday, very similar to the one back in March at Villa Park, where that time it was James Madison who scored 5 minutes after the break, and then Spurs in the end just ran away with it. And that was very much the case yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's spot on. It's more like the away performances than the home ones, maybe. Although, to be fair, and John McGinn kind of hinted at this in his post-match stuff, that the home game last season was, Spurs, probably some of the best football Spurs had played, just couldn't get the ball in the net. And he said in his post-match stuff, other than the fact that the atmosphere at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was probably the loudest he's ever experienced as an away player, he also said, we know this has been the pattern of games against Spurs. You've got to ride the storm, and we have against them away in recent seasons. However, this time we were just absolutely punished. And it was a really interesting game in terms of Villa came with their very clear game plan that they do, very structured, compact, very difficult to break down at the back, especially with the way Spurs play. The wingers, it's very clear that Spurs love the wingers and the fullback play to try and get the ball across and into the box. And Villa's set up with, there's always pretty much two men dealing with whether it was Sonny or Johnson in that first half, and the fullback coming inside was just making a really cluttered area, and it was working really well. And on the counter attack, I'd say they were a threat without creating clear chances. Probably Watkins one when he ran through and hit it wide was probably the best opportunity they really created from that. We'll talk about the goal they scored, which was kind of a bit of a mess of Spurs' own making more than Villa's, excellent set-piece play, which they are the leading set-piece scorers this in the Premier League season. But this was more about Spurs. But yeah, on the whole, I actually felt Spurs kind of dealt with that side of it quite well, but just couldn't find a way through. And then, whatever Postecoglou said to them at half-time just did the trick. They came out with a little bit kind of a different approach, a different game plan, and just found ways around and through Villa. And it worked to a T.
Yeah, I was just reading his comments from his interview with Spurs Play on what he basically said to the players at half-time, and it was, he went in and he wasn't really too worried, even though they were losing 1-0, because basically he saw the energy inside the dressing room and the fact that the players were so desperate to get back out onto the pitch, and he knows they can go up another gear or two. And we've seen that countless times this season at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in games, Brentford, West Ham as well, and then Villa, the latest one. But the fact they're going behind in so many games is concerning, but they do have it in them to turn the game around. So I think the stat was, after Villa scored in 14 Premier League home games in 2024, Spurs have gone behind in 12 of those.
Yeah, it's mad. It
is. But the good thing is they do manage to, find a way to win games. But I think it'd be nicer for everyone if they could just score the first goal and just run right after that, really.
Yeah, it is mad. But like you say, they've got that spirit to come back. This is the silly thing about obviously the Spursy tag, is that you'll get, I think it's like an average of once every 3 seasons they'll have a game like the Brighton game. but obviously the Spursy tag sticks. Whereas actually, they're probably one of the best teams and actually coming back from behind to win games. I mean, the stats are there. Sunday's comeback win was they equaled the Premier League record for home wins when conceding first in a single year. It was their 8th comeback in 2024 to win, and they've actually in this year have claimed 24 points at home from losing positions, and that's 10 more than the second place team on that stat table, which is Man City, which is just. Yeah, it is mad. And the biggest thing for me, and like you say, when Postecoglou kind of referred to the extra gears, and he said that in his press conference as well, that that's just the fitness levels are incredible. Because I was looking at kind of some of the stats into it after in the final third, and bearing in mind Villa changed most of their team midweek, didn't they, against Palace? Was it all but one player? I think maybe someone had said. I can't remember now.
I don't know how many changes in total, but I know they pretty much, went for it in terms of rotation.
Yeah, it was 9. I think it was 9 or 10 changes they made for the Palace defeat in midweek in the Carabao Cup. Whereas we know Spurs played all bar. I think it was 3. Was it 3 changes? I think. And you would think with that, and bearing in mind draining match against Man City, who, look, I was watching it from the other side of the world, and there was all this talk about it being an incredibly weakened City team, and it was like, well, it had a few youngsters in there. I'll definitely give you that, but I looked at it because I was thinking, how young was this team? And the average age of Spurs starting 11 was 24.8. City's was 26. It was not like this kid team that was thrown out against Spurs whatsoever. But yeah, so my point in being that Spurs had to do a lot of chasing still in the game, a draining match against City, and then come into this game and you think, well, as this game against Villa kind of wears on, Spurs are going to be the knackered team. But actually, Spurs won the ball back 11 times in the final third across the game. How many times do you think Villa won it in the final third?
1 or 2, or maybe 0.
0. It was 0.
Yeah.
Which showed also the quality of Spurs playing around the press as well. And also maybe a lackluster kind of intensity or lack of intensity. But also Spurs ran a combined 110.5 kilometres to Villa's 104.4 kilometres, despite all of the extra midweek efforts. So it just shows you the fitness levels that he's got in this team right now, and their willingness, I think, to play for one another, to run, to chase down. I mean, there's a few players we're going to talk about whose energy levels were just off the charts. They were just incredible. And that's how this Postecoglou system works. You can see it when they've lacked that intensity and tempo, as the Palace game. Oh, do you know what? While I was away, I watched a couple of the games on my phone while walking around various places. The Palace game I watched. I've got some family in Charlotte, and watched the game on a big screen in a sports bar with my nephew. I don't know why I picked that game as the one to watch on a big screen, because it was dreadful, and it had everything that was good against Villa was lacking in that Palace game. There was a real lack of tempo and intensity, and almost like they haven't won a game this season, we're going to go here and roll them over. But they can't afford to do that. No team can really afford to do that, and Spurs especially. And if it takes those little wake-up calls so that we get performances like we did against City and Villa, maybe you've just got to take that kind of rough with the smooth sometimes. But yeah, the best version of Spurs is the one that's an all-action, box-to-box running team, and it shows on days like yesterday.
One of those players who you mentioned, or didn't mention, but alluded to in terms of the energy, Pape Matar, he came into the Tottenham team, and I think that was probably one of the only really main talking points in terms of the teams that everyone else picked themselves, really, with Richarlison replacing the injured Mickey van der Ven, and Son coming back from injury to take his place on the left. I think it was always just going to be a decision between Pape Matar and James Madison. Second half against West Ham, the change, Sarr coming on for Madison, worked to perfection, with Spurs again running right in the second half. And probably 1 week ago at Palace, it was a bit of a surprise Sarr wasn't ready to come on at half-time, instead coming on the hour mark. But he's played so well of late. Performances maybe, I think, have gone on the radar, especially in terms of the national media. Then Tottenham fans have certainly noted the performances from Sarr, and he deserved his start. And, what a performance. And he just proved that it was the right team selection.
I thought. I mean, he's still 22. It's just. Honestly, I think you got the exact phrase there, under the radar. I just don't think people realise in the game just how good I mean, we kind of knew back when Spurs signed him, there was a lot of buzz around him that he was going to be this kind of special player. And then you and I had to kind of follow him closely at Metz and kind of during a very difficult season for them as they went down. He was a bit of a shining light, and also you can't discount the experience a young player who's a teenager then getting in a team that's fighting against relegation, having to scrap and battle and all of that while showing his versatility and technical ability. And yeah, Postecoglou just absolutely fell for him in that first pre-season. He was just like, this is, some player he's going to be. But it actually gained more starts, hasn't worked. Last year he got a lot of starts under Postecoglou. I think he was on the bench for the first game, wasn't he, at Brentford? And then from then on, he pretty much started the bulk of the Premier League games. And I put it to Postecoglou yesterday that because Sarr's only started 3 Premier League games out of the 10. And so I said, look, he's had to kind of fight to get back in your starting 11. But it almost feels like even that has helped him develop. And as classic, sometimes contrary Postecoglou is like, oh no, he's played loads of football and kind of thing. But it was kind of, my point is that he's not one of your starting Premier League players at the moment as much. And that's kind of been a bit of a challenge for him. But he did go on to say, I just, I'm trying to get his phrase, I rate him so highly. That was one of the things he said. And he brings something so different to the team. It's just this, he's got a bit of everything about him. In one moment, he can be threading a through ball, creating something at the other end, marching into the box to score a goal. We've seen, 2 or 3 of them this season. And at the other point, he can be sprinting back into his own half, intercepting the ball. I mean, the third goal was an interception from Sarr, wasn't it? I think it was. And then setting Richarlison away. I think he was involved in the second goal as well. He's just a phenomenal young player. And I like the fact that he's going under the radar. I do, because I don't think we want other teams to notice him. And he gives Postecoglou this kind of great option that he can, someone like Madison now, especially with Kulusevski coming through as a real creative force, it allows him to play about with that midfield far more. And Sarr's legs and energy just create such a problem for the opposition. And yeah, long may it continue, because, I mean, what position do you see him ending up in? Is he going to be a 6, or is he going to remain an 8, or is he going to push further up the pitch?
I'd keep him as an 8, just that box-to-box midfielder. I just think he has all the qualities to play in that role. I mean, he could play anywhere in midfield. He's that good a player, but I think to get the best out of him, I'd be keeping him in that box-to-box role. I think he's past few games, he's been brilliant. I thought Bentancur was probably the best midfielder in the first half yesterday. Agreed, but I thought Sarr really came to the fore in the second half, and as you said, key to the third goal, and also played a part in the second goal after getting the ball off Ben Davies and then feeding Brennan Johnson. Then it was that Decky and Dom Solanke combination that resulted in Tottenham's second goal. But in terms of Sarr, 12 months ago, he just set these incredible levels, because a few months before that, when Antonio Conte was in charge, he had such a good Champions League debut away at AC Milan. But we didn't really see too much of him after that. But it was once Postecoglou came in that he became a regular. And 2024, he certainly hasn't hit those levels he did in the final few months of last year. And what played a part in that was AFCON. Going to AFCON, just didn't seem the same player after that. And the fact that Bissouma and Madison had lost the form, there was so much chopping and changing, and that affected Sarr, thinking, as well as that, you've got to remember, he's 22 years old. His form is going to fluctuate from time to time, and previously an undroppable in the midfield, it's only Decky. I think he was guaranteed a place in the midfield at the moment, and that just shows you the strength in depth as well, that you've got the choice of Bentancur, Bissouma, Madison, and Sarr, and then there's Lucas Bergvall as well. So there's incredible depth there at the moment. And yeah, for Sarr to only start 3 games in the Premier League, come off the bench in 7, but he's had a big say in Europe as well. The goals against Karabag and Ferencvaros as well. he's more than playing his part at the minute. And I think he's giving Ange quite a dilemma in terms of a starting spot in the Premier League, and he's ending the year in the best way possible, and long may it continue.
Yeah, it's fascinating what you say there is how much, and it shows you how things can change so quickly. You know, we were talking towards the end of last season about, is Kulusevski even, where's his place in this Postecoglou team, because he doesn't fit the winger role. And like you say, and Sarr was starting every game, and I do think you touched on a really good point there, that I do think with these young players, we sometimes forget that they need the older players around them to be stable and playing well as well, sometimes to help them along. And definitely the fluctuations in form in the Spurs midfield would not have helped Sarr as the season went on at all. But he's just, he's stepping up. He's growing as a player. And actually, talking of growth, he's probably going to get bigger and stronger as well. He's only 22, and more time in the Premier League, he's going to become physically and his stature a much stronger player as well. And I know there's been kind of suggestions over the years that, I don't know, he played for obviously Spurs rivals, but that he could end up developing into a bit of a Vieira type player. And I can see that. I can see that in his game. He's got that all round ability to it. But yeah, I had to ask about him. My first question on my return, because I just thought everyone's going to be talking about Solanke, and I thought Johnson was terrific as well. Maybe went under a radar a little bit in the game, but I just thought Sarr was just absolutely immense in the midfield and so key to everything good they did.
Yeah, before we wax lyrical about a few more Tottenham players, I think need to discuss Villa's goal, because not a good one to concede from a Tottenham perspective, from another set piece. But I think this was one when it's just not helped with Pedro Porro getting that touch on the ball, the header. So that just speeds the ball up. Bentancur can do nothing about it when it hits him, and it just falls kindly to Morgan Rogers. And prior to that, I mean, it was Spurs creating the better openings in the game. Didn't really test Martinez.
No.
But Villa themselves, they didn't do enough to test Vicario either.
No. And Vicario, after their goal, I mean, all I can remember is Anana's header against the post that kind of went towards goal. Other than that, Vicario just didn't really have much to do in the game, which was testament to the defence and how well they played. And I know we're going to talk about a couple of defenders later, but the goal itself is such a shame as well, because it just kind of opens up and I think slightly lazy set piece narrative now about Spurs, because we mustn't forget that goal yesterday was Spurs' second set piece goal they've conceded this season. It's like made into this big thing. Obviously, some sites round up put throw-ins in there as like a set, so you might find that some sites add another couple in there. But essentially, look, we're talking about corner kicks, free kicks. That's what we're talking about when it comes to set piece goals. A throw, somewhere over the halfway line, I can't really see as a set piece goal, because it ends up being open play. Unless you could probably count a really long lobbed throw into the box. That's a bit different. But so in essence, it was just the second set piece goal they've conceded in the Premier League this season. But what I noticed, I think we had on our screens at the stadium yesterday, I think they showed a little bit of the halftime footage. Was it Sky had the game? I think it was.
Yeah.
And there was a little graphic at the bottom of it, and it had it lumped in all of last season's kind of problems with set pieces. So the tally was huge, or whatever it was. And it's like, I'd rather they look at the comparison. And it's like, okay, last season was bad in terms of set piece defending, but actually this season, with Nick Montgomery having a big say in the set pieces as well, both attacking and defensive, they've improved massively. And I think that should kind of be looking at, but instead it's just like, oh yeah, we know Spurs are rubbish at set pieces. And actually, the problem with this set piece defending wasn't so much like picking up a man too much. It was more the fact that they won the initial header, but Porro made a mess of it and sent it backwards. In any other kind of occasion, the first contact on that ball is sending it away from the goal, but he sends it backwards. Felt sorry for Rodrigo Bentancur, who, like you say, played very well in the first half. Hits him, nothing he can really do about it. Vicario actually makes a good reflex save. And then, Rodgers is just in the perfect position to slam it home. And it was a bit of a gift for Villa, a big gift really for Villa. But Spurs reacted really well to it, to be honest.
Yeah, They did. Before we go into the second half, Ali will tell everyone now about the benefits of using NordVPN, as I'm sure you've been using it quite a lot over the past few weeks.
I have. We always say this. It's good when you can kind of have personal experience. And actually, I use two different elements of Nord. I use NordVPN in itself to be able to make my phone think it was back in the UK, so that I could download and watch a couple of shows I wanted to watch while I was waiting for flights and things like that as well. But I also use Saily, which we've spoken about in the past, which is the eSIM. Which, oh my goodness, it saved me so much money. It was incredible. It was really, really good. So whenever I've gone abroad in the past, I've just essentially used my network and paid the silly cost that you end up paying for roaming, especially when it's not too bad when you're in Europe, but when you go, I was in America, it's just something ridiculous, like almost £8 a day, which, when you're away for a couple of weeks, just mounts up. So this time I thought, I've spoken about it enough. Let's have a look into this. So used Saily, and it's fantastic. It cost a fraction of that, gave me a massive bundle of data, and I was able to use that while I was away instead of my my normal network stuff. And so, yeah, from a personal perspective, NordVPN once again came to my rescue, and was really helpful in not only watching Spurs and things like that and watching shows I wanted to watch, but also saving me loads of money. And on top of all of that, we know, because I've said it enough times, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, which means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It's also helpful. I would switch it on when I was using public Wi-Fi out there, as it goes some way to helping stop nasty people getting into your phone through dubious means or any devices you're using. And not only that, but you can get a big discount off your NordVPN plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. Our link will give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link, in case you just missed it there, is in the podcast episode description box.
So Tottenham made the perfect start to the second half, scoring after 4 minutes, and this came from some Son Heung-min brilliance. He was back in the team after his recent absence through a hamstring injury, missed the past 3 games. I don't think he looked 100% fit, especially in the first half. There was one moment where I think Solanke played the ball through down the left and Son just didn't run full pelt. I don't know whether there was just too much on it or Son just thought, I'm not going to get to this. Might be a bit of an issue, but second half, what a ball that was from Son down the left wing. The whip on it was incredible, and all Brennan Johnson had to do was just get into that correct position in the penalty box, and he did that, as we've seen time and time again this season. I don't know whether Solanke would have got on the end of it.
Yeah, I thought that as well. It's interesting you say that. I didn't watch it back until a while after, and actually he might have. Yeah, he could have got there just behind Johnson.
But I mean, that's what Ange wants from his wingers, to be coming into the middle when the winger on the opposite side has got the ball and he's swinging it in. And yeah, really good finish. As I said, just seen that number of times from him this season.
Yeah, and that's exactly, we've spoken about this on previous pods. This is exactly what they've been training Johnson to do over and over and over again. And to be fair, all the wingers, but Johnson is the one who clearly has taken it on board the most. I mean, that's his 7th goal of the season now. He's just getting into these great areas. And he's had other chances. He admitted himself in the post-match interview. He's had other chances in previous games that he could have put away. He could be in double figures by now because he just keeps popping up in the right areas. And yeah, the ball from Son was delicious. It was absolutely pinpoint. It was, we talk about getting to the byline and pulling it across, but he managed to do that from the edge of the area, the curl and whip on it. It just, I can't remember who the first defender was, but he was kind of almost like pointing at Martinez to say, there you go, it's yours. It's like, no way. That ball is right in that danger zone between keeper and defender. And yeah, perfect goal, perfect time. I love the fact that Johnson just did a quick celebration, grabbed the ball, went straight back and said, we keep going. And he said after the game about how that's how they think. that's the Postecoglou way. It's relentless. You score, you go and score another one. You don't sit there and just enjoy the moment. You keep cracking on and taking it to Villa. And I think that was key, was that as soon as that goal went in as well, the entire crowd changed. Everything about the stadium changed. And just Villa suddenly looked petrified. They looked under pressure. Whereas I felt there were periods in the first half where Villa had sometimes more of the possession and they almost looked like the home team at stages. Whereas, Spurs just got the handle of the game, and from then on, Villa were done, really.
Yeah, I mean, that was Son's pretty much last real involvement in the match, because I think it was about 55 minutes in when he made way that Ange said in his post-match press conference that Son was only really going to play an hour or so following his return from injury. And his reaction basically said it all, really. He was just like questioning, pointing to himself like, do you mean me? Am I coming off here? Clearly not happy to come off, wanted to play a bit more because the TV cameras panned to him in the dugout and he was chuntering to himself, and he had his shirt collar in his mouth, chewing on that. Just wasn't happy. But I mean, any player in that situation, you don't want to come off. No player wants to come off in the game, especially as well when you just whipped in such a good ball to get your team back into it and you sense in another goal. But in the end, proves to be the right decision, with Spurs scoring another 3 goals. And I think at the moment, it's just a case of managing Son's fitness.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where had it gone the other way in the game, I think it maybe would have been more of a talking point and more of something that could have been overanalyzed. But to be honest, as you said, it was the right decision. It's hindsight proved it to be absolutely spot on. It protected Son, and I was trying to work it out after, because it clearly was a pre-planned thing, and Postecoglou made a big point of this. And to be honest, I think we all expected him to come off after about an hour, because he hadn't, he's played one game in the last, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. Probably, it's been a while. But I can only assume, because my first thought was like, did no one tell Son that he was only going to play an hour or so, or just under? But I just wonder that maybe because, like you say, he provided that great assist, went on a couple of really lovely runs just afterwards. Maybe he thought, well, they're not going to take me off now because they can see I found my rhythm, kind of thing. And then they kind of stuck to the original plan. It surprised him. I actually thought he was heading off on the opposite side, because he went back over to the left wing, and we thought, all right, maybe he's going off that side to come around to allow Richarlison to just come on quickly. And then, like you say, he started pointing to himself like, me, are you sure, kind of thing. And then when he sat on the bench, I thought he said loudly a couple of times like, why? But then when I watched back the replay, I couldn't find that moment again. It was just something that we saw on our little monitors in the stadium. It looked like he was saying that. There was a couple of one other media outlet that claimed he was swearing a bit, but I couldn't see that to verify whether that was the case or not. But I think privately, Postecoglou will be delighted with that. I think he'll think, brilliant. That shows that even my captain, the most experienced player, 32 years old kind of thing, he just wants to be out there. He wants to be playing. He wants to be part of this. He doesn't want to spend a minute off of the pitch because of how we're going right now. 9 wins out of 11. The team's kind of in a good vein of form right now, other than the odd little blip like Palace and that Brighton second half. And they all want to be a part of it. So I don't think he'll be too concerned about it. And Son is a real team player. I think just his emotions in the moment just got the better of him this time. And after the game, he was completely normal. I saw there was like tunnel footage, and he's walking past the camera doing a little sticks his tongue out at the camera with a kind of a cheeky look on his face. So it was nothing more than what it is, and it's actually proved to be a brilliant decision, because that worried me a little bit, that he came back in the West Ham game and suddenly had soreness and missed the games after. That wasn't a good sign. That was, maybe a sign of an underlying thing that needed more time to be sorted out, and he'd maybe pushed himself back a little bit too quickly. So, taking it carefully with him this time makes absolute sense, especially when we saw what happened with Richarlison afterwards, coming off with what looks like a hamstring problem, and that's another player who can play on the left wing down, and you're going to need Sonny, your captain. It's as Postecoglou said, it's all about the bigger picture, and I hope not too much is made of that moment because it was kind of became smaller and smaller as the goals rattled in, really.
Yeah, I mean, it was November last year when the injuries started to pile up, and we've seen Van der Ven come off against City. Romero's come off in the past 2 games now. Richie got that hamstring issue. Yeah, it's the last thing you want to see. And we will talk about the upcoming Galatasaray game on Thursday. So I think that gives Ange a bit of an opportunity to rotate his team again. But given the current issues, you just don't want to be taking any chances because, as you mentioned, on the left, there's limited options at the moment, really, because Wilson Odobert is also out, and that one seems a bit more serious. So there's no time frame on when Wilson will be back yet. But the last thing you want to do is just be pushing Son too much at this time. But as you said, the change worked to perfection, and Tottenham got their second goal. I think it was about 15 minutes from the end. Dom Solanke. What a move this was. Ben Davies playing the crucial role in the goal. This is Davies who had to come on in place of Romero. He's more than played his part in the past 2 games, and we will touch upon him soon. But Sarr involved in that nice interchange between Johnson and Kulusevski. That reverse ball from Decky was exquisite to Solanke, and the finish just as good. And something we've wanted from Solanke in recent weeks, because I think 3 goals prior to yesterday, he's doing so much right on the pitch for Tottenham at the moment, and maybe something that is overlooked by football fans in general is his general play, because he works so hard for the team. And even though we might not be scoring, and that's what a lot of fans will point to, his record for Tottenham, but what he brings to the team, and just, playing in Johnson and Son, whoever's either side of him, he does so much for the team, and everyone appreciates it.
Yeah, just want to check, is your top like a tribute to Dejan Kulusevski, or have you been called up for the coming international break?
I've had this for years, this top. So. But yeah, it can be a tribute to Decky.
For those who aren't watching on YouTube, Guesty is wearing a Sweden national team tracksuit top. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, that's right.
It's very smart, very nice. I like that.
£12. I bought it for years ago.
£12.
Yeah,
it is a proper one. Yeah, it's not a dodgy one.
I got it from the Adidas shop, so I hope it was legit.
That would be very disappointing, wouldn't it, if it was dodgy in there?
Yeah, it's got 4 stripes down their sleeves. So.
It's very smart. It's very smart. Yeah, brilliant ball from your man Decky. And yeah, I really like Solanke. I just think he's just. There was so much flack he was getting on social media. I was like looking at half time, and had so many people like, or I would say so many people, but some people replying like £65 million. Oh, if only we'd signed a £65 million striker, I could put these chances away. And what I've just noticed, I mean, watching from afar in the last couple of games, the service to him has been rubbish. He's just had so little of the ball. And shock horror, give him the ball, and that's what happens. Play a pass like that. And I love the fact that his move for that goal, his first goal, it came about because he was pressing and chasing back to try and get a tackle. So he was actually out of his normal position, and then he was able to just ghost back in to the final third without Villa realising as much. Ran in behind, timed the run perfectly, Decky timed the ball perfectly. The finish was just, it's like a training ground finish, like there was no pressure on him whatsoever. And that's the £65 million kind of thing. That's to have someone that could do the incredible work that he does off the ball, and he was still chasing in the final kind of minutes of the game, bearing in mind how much football he's played recently, but then also can produce a finish like that. And then you've got the poacher's instinct, which brought the next goal that we'll talk about as well. And yeah, I mean, the players appreciate him so much. Johnson did a good little kind of bit about him in his club interview after the game, where just how much Solanke's work goes under the radar, and just how much the team appreciates him. And he said it's not just his goals. He can hold it up, he can dribble, he's quick, he's strong, he's powerful, he's such a good player. And also we pass it around a lot, but when we do go a bit longer, it's more of a pass. It's not really a long ball, but he can hold it up for us. And then when the ball goes into the box, he's a fox in the box as well. So he shows everything about striker play. And it's brilliant to see. And I kind of people making out that he hasn't contributed too much in the final third. In his first 10 starts for the club, he's got 7 goal involvements. It's like, that's not bad. That's not too shabby at all for a start. 5 goals, 2 assists. And bearing in mind the lack of service he's had. And he is far more of a creator than I expected him to be as well, with the way he holds the ball, swivels, plays in players around him as well. And he just seems like, I know this isn't the be-all and end-all, but he just comes across as such a genuinely likable chap as well. Everyone inside the club has really taken to him. He's quite a quiet guy. I don't think he's like a big personality or anything like that, but he just gets on with it, works incredibly hard, forces the opposition into mistakes. Like I said earlier, 11 times Spurs won the ball back in the final third. A lot of that was the work he did. There was one, wasn't there, move where he came back and just nicked the ball off Pau Torres, which set Spurs away as well. Yeah, he's a terrific striker. And I just think that's going to be, as long as they can keep him fit and allow him to rest when they can, and the Richarlison injury really doesn't help that. But I do think it's going to make Spurs such a different proposition to last season. The issues they were having with a focal point and different players playing in that role up front. Solanke fits, I mean, we've said it a million times, but Solanke fits this system like a glove. It's just perfect for him. My only surprise is that actually is the lack of service, because in a Postecoglou system, he should be getting chance after chance. And once they figure that out, just defenses are going to be obliterated. They really are, because he's got that ability to put the ball in the net, as we saw for both goals. And he's only going to get better and better the more he fits into the system. And terrific player.
I think he's just an absolute nightmare for defenders to play against. Just the work rate, constantly pressing, strength, hold-up play. He's got everything. I asked Mickey van der Ven, what's it like coming up against Solanke in training? Just what impact has he had in the team? This was pre-AZ Alkmaar presser at Hotspur Way 2 weeks ago. And again, he was just like, wow, like the work he puts in on the pitch is incredible. Just the work rate. And I think he is pretty much a player's player. Might not get the praise from the outside by, a lot of fans, maybe the national media at times, because as I mentioned earlier, people will probably just look at the amount of goals you're scoring. And that's always going to be a case for strikers. They're always judged on goals. But if you ask each of his teammates about him, they will just constantly praise him and what he does. He's a proper team player. And I thought he was going to be good for Spurs, but the levels he's producing at the moment, I didn't expect it. And I think there's even more to come from him, which is the good thing.
That's it. I think he does both. I think he has that all-round play. And, we said it before, things like helping defend set pieces. I think that will have been helped by his presence as well. But he's also a guy that's going to put the ball in the net. And I don't know. We've said this before about this rush to judge that's out, like this kind of weird thing that, and it is a social media thing as well. I think the fans inside the stadium appreciate him, and they were singing his name yesterday. And I do think, saying all of that, it was still quite a key game, I think, for him in terms of continuing to develop that bond with the fans. I think they saw what he was all about. They saw all the different sides to his game and the quality of his finishes as well, especially that first one. And I think they could just see what play they've actually got now. Because obviously there were some doubts about the price tag and when certain kind of other strikers they wanted instead of him. And I just think Postecoglou wanted him so much, and it's very quickly become clear why. It really is.
Yeah. Nice finish as well for the second one. Proper striker's goal from close range. Again, really good play from Spurs. Pape Matar involved, travelling with the ball forward and then slipping in Rich, who surprised me quite a bit, because I thought he was just going to shoot in that position. Decent angle as well to get a shot off, but really good cutback and tidy finish from Dom. Such a shame for Richie, really, having come back from injury. only a few weeks ago, and then pulled something in his he pulled his hamstring when putting the ball across, and he was, hunched over the side of the advertising boards when the players were celebrating, and you could just tell he was totally gutted when he was laying on the pitch. And Ange will be speaking to the media on Wednesday in Istanbul ahead of the Galatasaray game, so we'd imagine there'll be a bit more of an update on Richie, and I think everyone will probably have the fingers crossed it's maybe something a bit minor like Van der Ven's issue, a strained hamstring, rather than a serious one, because he's just had rotten luck on the injury front since he's come to Spurs. And I think he put on Instagram a few weeks ago, I think it was after he's come back, just like how happy he was to be back on the pitch, and just kind of what a nightmare situation it was for him. So for him potentially to be back in this scenario once again is not good, because we've seen just what he can contribute to the Tottenham team in the past few games. So fingers crossed, not a bad one for him, but to see him get an assist and just have an impact in the final third.
How many questions did you ask Ange about Richarlison while I was away?
I asked 2, and they were legit, like, about his fitness. I saw someone comment, I only ask questions about Richarlison.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. Everyone just forget about the Odebear ones and the other ones. Just Richie.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect you to only ask about him. I just wondered if you'd get a couple in there, and you duly did, which is fine. Yeah, like you say, that it was the absolute right time to ask about Richarlison. I do feel sorry for him in terms of his pattern of his time at Tottenham has been make an impact, get injured, make an impact, get injured. He doesn't kind of have any middle ground. He's kind of does really kind of impact's probably the word. He kind of plays his part for Spurs, and then just some other part of his body lets him down. And obviously, hamstring is going to always be the concern when a player's kind of hasn't played too much football and they're starting to come back and they're trying to exert themselves. And it's such a shame, because the ball was great. It was a terrific ball across to Solanke. He picked him out really well, but just the moment he hit it, he held the back of his hamstring. It was just, for goodness sake. And yeah, I actually thought initially that he'd slid into the hoardings behind, because I kind of was focused on the goal itself, and I just saw him, like you say, hunched over them. Yeah, fingers crossed that it's more like Mickey Van der Ven is just like a strain or something, but we'll find out, because it just must be so morale sapping when you're constantly coming back and having to be out again. And the problem is frustrations grow then within the club, because they kind of feel like you can't trust the player to be available. And of course, frustrations grow around the fans. I remember what Eric Lamela used to get from the fans. It was just like he would give everything when he was available, and then you'd kind of lose him again for a period of time. Especially that chunk in the middle, wasn't it? Was it his hips? I'm trying to remember. I think it was both his hips.
Yeah, hips. Yeah.
But yeah, with Richarlison, it's so unfortunate. But again, great goal, really good finish, good run from Solanke, and to get the double was just reward really for his efforts on the day.
Yeah, another injury update we'll probably get on Wednesday will be regarding Christian Romero. I think this one a bit more self-inflicted, going in for the tackle on Morgan Rogers. He was booked for it, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah, not a good tackle, and he's come off worse. Looks to be a foot injury. Then he had his boot off. The medics were looking at his foot. And this is the second game he's come off against City. I don't know whether Ange said Kuti was tired or tight. I think he said tired, but tight fits better in terms of what else he said after the City game. But this is the last thing you want at the moment, especially when Van der Ven's on the sidelines. And this happened 12 months ago, Van der Ven and Romero out for a period of time, because we had Emerson at centre-back, Ben Davies at centre-back. Not good. Hopefully positive news on Romero.
Yeah, we should explain to people the whole tired, tight thing. So Postecoglou says certain words in a certain way. And one of the kind of nightmares we're finding as journalists, I say nightmares, it's not the biggest in the world, but when Ange says tired and tight, with his Australian kind of twang, his accent, it sounds like the same word. And we will listen to it back a million times and we'll all have a different view on what the word was he said. I mean, I was in Miami and you even sent me the audio clip to see if I could help work it out. And I thought it sounded like tired, but then I listened to his post-match club interview and it sounded like he said tight. And it was just like, oh my goodness, it's just this really funny word that we're having issues with. I don't think anyone's going to just say to us, Ange, could you speak a little slowly and clearly, please, and enunciate the word? Because it's like, you're never, ever going to say that. But it's two very, very different words. One just kind of signifies that you need a rest. The other is something else that could be more serious if it's played on or risked or anything. And you end up wondering with Sonny, he said he was a bit tired, didn't he? And then you kind of think back, it's like, did he mean tight? Was his hamstring a bit tight? This was after the West Ham game, and yeah, with Romero, it was self-inflicted. And in Ange's own words, he's a tough cookie. So if he comes off, it must have been pretty sore. But the one thing I would say is that right now, albeit I still would like them to have another kind of body in there, it feels, doesn't it, like they're better placed slightly to deal with it than they were last season?
Oh, 100%. Just with Richarlison on the bench, because 12 months ago there'd been Dyer and Davis. Ashley Phillips was in the squad, but never given a chance in the Premier League by Ange. But yeah, I think Richarlison, I thought was brilliant against City, and I thought it was really, really impressive again against Villa. He just needs this run of games because he's moved from Genoa, where he's playing week in, week out, one of the best defenders, centre-backs in Serie A, and it's just not quite happened for him at Spurs because he's got two, really good defenders in front of him in Van der Ven and Romero. He's going to play a lot more this season because of the return to Europe and the run in the Carabao Cup. But it's the Premier League where you want to be playing week in, week out. And I mean, you could maybe make a case for Richarlison starting over Romero. When you look at the form over the past few months. But when he's come in, apart from the Carabao game when he got sent off after 7 minutes, he's been dependable, and he's just someone who you want in your area because he's so good in the air, can head the ball really well, and I think he can be a big weapon for Spurs in terms of the corners as well. But no, I've been really impressed with him, and credit as well to Ben Davies, who's come on the past couple of games and performed well. I think he's viewed as a centre back now rather than a left back at Tottenham, because you got Jed and Archie Gray who can operate as left back if Destiny Doggy isn't playing. But no, that's what you want if your main two defenders are coming out. You want established options on the bench, and Tottenham do have that in defence now, and certainly in midfield and other areas of the pitch.
Yeah, I just think the fit is better this season. In terms of last season, it was Eric Dyer coming in, who just didn't suit the system whatsoever. And then later we saw when we had Van der Ven and Romero both out, you saw Davies and Emerson playing together, which is, that at that point was two fullbacks kind of trying to play together. Whereas I feel like, and you touched on it about the extra game time that's available this season. This was something Ange said at the start of the season, was that having European competition, having the Carabao Cup matches, and the ability, it means taking gambles sometimes, but giving players minutes in these cup competitions, while it might be scary and it might be more rotation, it's going to pay off in the long run as the season progresses, because these players are going to be sharper. They're going to be in their rhythm. They're going to understand each other's game, so that when you need to make changes, let's say in the Premier League, these players will then fit in effortlessly. Whereas last season, you had the bare minimum amount of games. Players were going to have to come in, and they were coming in cold. They were like, oh my goodness, there's no sharpness, no rhythm to them whatsoever. And also, like I say, playing players that don't really kind of play in those positions. Whereas now, I feel like Richarlison looks more settled in the Premier League. He looks more settled in the Postecoglou way. Even, I think probably the last step, or not last step, but one of the steps for him, I think, is going to be feeling more comfortable under pressure, playing that ball out with his feet against the press. But I do feel like he's getting better and better at that. There was still one moment I think I remember that was a little bit like kind of when he had the ball at his feet. But on the whole, I think he's adapting to that, and more game time is going to suit that. But also, being able to play together in Europe in the Carabao Cup matches, I think is allowing him and Davies to form a bit of a partnership. And like you said, when I saw watching the City game from afar, they came on, they locked it up. I must admit, when Ben Davies, and I'm a Ben Davies fan, I think he's been absolutely phenomenal signing for Spurs over the years in terms of what he's provided for the club and just always been there for them. But I was a little bit nervy. I was thinking it was City and the players that they've got there and the attacking that they can bring to the game. That's going to be a big ask. But the two of them locked it down completely. And they just did that again against Villa. And as we said earlier, Ben Davies had a crucial part to play in the second goal as well, in that important block on Watkins and getting the ball to Sarr. And I think that's what I mean. I still would like another body in there, and I do wonder whether they'll rectify that in January and just bring in another, because they're one away from one more injury away really from Archie Gray having to play as a centre back, which is not ideal. But I do think as long as it doesn't get any worse, I'm less worried about the absence of Van der Ven, let's say, than last season. Last season, Van der Ven was out. It was a disaster. Let's be honest. Whereas now I feel like the team learned to cope with not having to be so reliant on his pace with the higher line, that they kind of adjust, and it might be a Doggy who runs back, or they just know not to push up quite as far. I thought the defence, other than that moment of set piece defending, which was, like I say, was mainly on Porro just heading the ball the wrong way, I thought they defended really well on the whole, and Dragic and Davies just, coming in and locking it up is exactly what the team needed.
That'll actually be interesting in January if they do think about signing a new centre-back, because Ange was asked about this in the end of August.
Yeah.
And he was basically like,
I think it was me. I think I asked him, yeah.
Basically, don't want to block the path of Luka Vuskovic, who's coming in next summer, and then there's Ashley Phillips as well. So
True.
I don't know what you do in that situation. Do you buy someone? Do you loan someone? Or do you just bring Phillips back for 6 months?
Yeah, it's a great point. Maybe a loan, like a Timo Werner style thing, where you just do them to the end of the season, you see how it goes. Although, to be fair, I think within that answer, he kind of said something along those lines, that he's not too keen on short-term kind of fixes to things. But it's just my worry that is if you have 2 to 3 injuries, then it starts to get a bit more problematic with the volume of games. I mean, it could be that Alfie Dorrington gets his chance, and that's the big kind of thing for him. And Vuskovic is just he looks like an incredible young talent, and looks like someone that's going to adapt quite quickly to the physicality of the Premier League as well. Ashley Phillips, I mean, he's got a lovely goal, that back flick the other week for Stoke. But yeah, I'd be interested to see whether he's got a long-term future at Spurs. I just can't make my mind up yet. I think I can't decide whether I feel he will entirely fit the Postecoglou system or not. To be fair, he hasn't really had the opportunities to show whether he can or not. Maybe that's what gives me pause, is that they haven't given him the opportunities to show that. But then, he is very, very young, and he had a terrific season or half season at Plymouth. Was their young player of the year, wasn't he? So we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, it's a great point. I forgot he said that. I should have remembered when quite frankly, I think it was my question to him. But I just worry in terms of that extra body, especially that left side. The left side just feels a little bit vulnerable if you get another one. Unless it is, I mean, it's not really fixing the problem, but you never know. In January, maybe Ben Davies gets an offer to go somewhere and plays regular football week in, week out. And they take that, and maybe it's a case of swapping him for someone else. But that, doesn't really fix your numbers issue. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It might be one to revisit with another question for him as January approaches.
Yep. So Tottenham wrap things up in stoppage time. James Madison brilliant free kick, gave Emi Martinez no chance in the Villa goal. And it's been a bit tough for Madison the past couple of games. Being on the bench, wasn't involved at all against City in the Cup. Came on closing minutes against Villa. Had one chance on goal, and he took it. Quick reminder, really, to everyone just what he can produce. And Madison last season, undoubtedly an undroppable in the team. This season, well, certainly in the past few weeks, he's no longer guaranteed a place in the team. As I said earlier, it's probably only really Decky who you'd guarantee a place in the midfield, and that's only a good thing for Postecoglou. But what a way to wrap up a brilliant day for Spurs.
Yeah, there was a great shot, wasn't there? They had the player lying on the floor behind the wall, didn't they? And I saw one of the angles of it where you're kind of seeing him staring at the ball, and it was a terrific thing. I mean, to have Martinez, who wasn't he recently voted like best goalkeeper in the world, just watching the ball go in. He couldn't do anything about it. There was also a certain irony to the fact that Villa wasted so much time, and Martinez kind of key to that actually he provided the 10 minutes of added time for Madison to come on and score that lovely free kick against him. Madison, it's an interesting one. Towards the end of last season, he was coming out of the starting lineup a couple of times, wasn't he? I feel I remember that just as the season kind of came towards its end because his form was a little bit sticky after coming back. I think you're right. I think Kulusevski turning kind of his entire, I think just his importance under Postecoglou around, he's, like you say, become the undroppable, and I think that puts more pressure on Madison, as does Sarr's continued growth. I like seeing Madison and Kulusevski together in certain games. I do think it works. But then when you've got a game against a team like Villa who flood the midfield and you need a little bit more strength and kind of box-to-box ability, I can absolutely understand why Sarr comes in, and then it's either going to be Madison or Kulusevski, and absolutely right now Kulusevski's not coming out of that starting lineup unless he needs a rest. So yeah, this is what Madison needs to do. He needs to come on and show it any time he's got the moments of quality. Nice little hug between him and Postecoglou after the game. Postecoglou had a little chat in his ear for a while as well. You presume he starts and plays the bulk of the game in midweek in Istanbul. And it's just a case of everyone getting minutes now and doing everything they can. That's the beauty of competition. It's supposed to drive everyone on. It gives everyone a point to prove, and it should, in theory, get improved performances across the board. And yeah, for Spurs not to become so reliant on Madison, especially after what we saw last season when he got injured and then struggled to refine his form at first when he came back, I think that's been a key thing, and it's something that's that they've addressed. And fair play to him. It was a beautiful free kick. It was his 50th Premier League goal, and I think it was his 9th direct free kick goal in the Premier League as well. I was trying to work out what the last direct Spurs free kick was as well.
Was
it Ericsson?
Would Harry Kane's count against Brentford?
I don't think so. It was a lovely goal, but I think it stopped becoming a free kick, didn't it? At the moment it was going. Was it Decky passed it to him?
Yeah, it was Decky with the back heel. But this is the thing what you have with like corners now. If you take it short, it's still classed as a corner until the opposition team get it. But other than that Kane free kick,
Lucas scored one in the FA Cup against Marine. I remember that. Ericsson, I feel like there was one from Ericsson. Was it 2019? Can't be that long. It can't be 5 years ago. The last Premier League direct free kick.
Have they scored one in Europe or in a cup comp recently? Maybe.
Nothing springs to mind. By all means, anyone listening, let us know on social media. If you're watching on YouTube, stick it in the comments underneath. But none sprung to mind for me, other than the Kane one, which we're not sure whether we can classify as a free kick or not. I don't think it did officially go down as a free kick, did it? I don't think in the stats. And the Lucas one against Marine. I always just remember that Marine game as, other than Alfie Devine becoming the youngest one, it's always for me about
Vinicius.
Vinicius. Celebrating like he just won the Ballon d'Or kind of thing. And it was like, you just scored a hat-trick against the team in the 9 levels below Spurs, I think it was. yes, yeah, brilliant day that was. I mean, it was just an amazing experience, but that for some reason sticks in my mind.
Yeah, so Tottenham's 4-1 win over Villa yesterday meant they're now the Premier League's top scorers. 22 goals, 9 wins in 11. Won every cup game this season.
32 goals across 15
yeah.
games. It's mad.
Spurs are definitely going in the right direction. A few more wins away in the Premier League would be nice. It's just one of these, they're either brilliant or when they lose, they're bad. It's like nothing in the middle, but no, they're definitely going in the right direction. And you were in Ange Postecoglou's post-match press conference yesterday. Ange paying a classy tribute to Ugo Ehiogu, former Tottenham Academy coach.
Yeah, he kind of clearly wanted to say it at some point in the press conference, and he it was my question about Sarr. He just kind of just went off into this kind of different direction, and it was a really lovely answer, to be honest. It was it was Ugo Ehiogu's would have been birthday yesterday. Obviously, if anyone doesn't know who Ugo Ehiogu is, he was, I mean, England international. I think he played 4 or 5 times for England. Probably more so known as a defender for Aston Villa, Middlesbrough as well. But then he came to Spurs. I think he started off doing kind of part-time work for the academy, and then he became the under-21s boss. I think it was about 2014. I think it was. He spent about 3 years as the under-21s boss, and then just horrendous. I remember having to kind of report on it all at the time. He suffered a cardiac arrest at Hotspur Way on April 20th, 2017, and passed away the next morning. It just shook everyone at the club. He's only 44 years old. It's just, he made such a mark at the club. He was such a popular figure. He'd brought so many young players through, developed them, helped coach them, and just was a really kind of well-loved figure. And his assistant coach in the under-21s was Matty Wells, who we now know is Ange Postecoglou's assistant boss in the first team. So this week, during the week, Matt Wells spoke to the first team players about Ugo. And Postecoglou just kind of, was talking about it in the press conference and just saying, like, we know Matty Wells is a great communicator as well, and I think he learned so much from Ehiogu as well, and he just took this kind of moment to really talk about Ugo Ehiogu as a man and as a coach and the values he had, and Andrew said it really, you could see the market left on the players. It really made a big thing because trying to think, most of those players, barring probably Sonny and Davies, wouldn't have been around at the time. I think they're the only two that would have been around at the time. And to still make a mark on people that maybe didn't know him so well, it clearly left its mark. And he kind of said, look, for Ugo's wife and son, it's going to be a difficult time right now on a day like this when it would have been his birthday, but hopefully we kind of would have given him a little, or given them a little cheer in a way, and just to let them know that his memory lives on. He might be gone, but he's never going to be forgotten at this football club. And it was just a really kind of lovely tribute to a very popular man at the club, and obviously for Villa as well. Just what a strange coincidence on the day of his birthday, Villa are playing the Spurs. It was you kind of got a feel for Matthew as well. I can't imagine anyone was or within the club was as shaken up as Matt Wells would have been at that time. I've no doubt he probably would have been on the training pitch with him when it or in the training ground when it happened. And it was a really kind of classy kind of moment to make sure that the attention was brought back to Ugo. And it was must have been an amazing talk from Matt Wells as well about him.
Yeah, I think it's just another example of the powerful speeches you have from Ange and the coaching staff at the club. This is, before games, because I interviewed Archie Gray the other day and I was asking him about the team talks, and he says, like, family's usually a big thing in them because they treat everyone at the club as family, and you do everything on the pitch for your family. So again, as you said, it's just quite clearly rubbed off on the players, and what a way to celebrate him. 4-1 win over Aston Villa. Right, moving on to Thursday's game against Galatasaray. You're heading out to Istanbul tomorrow. Any surgery planned when you're there, turkey teeth or anything like that?
Thanks for that. Yeah, maybe I will now. I am actually having a bit of a tooth issue at the moment, so yeah, maybe I can get it fixed in Turkey. That's absolutely thrown me. I'm actually having to go out there an evening earlier purely because of the timings of the flights. Mean that the one I would have taken the next day, I wouldn't get there in time for the press conference. So I'm having to go out the night before. I don't arrive till late at night anyway. It's going to be interesting. I've never been there, never been to Turkey or Istanbul. I've read all the stuff about the fans have been told. I think it's going to be an experience, if I can use that word, for the fans. I think they're going to be very much shuttled in and out of the stadium, and hopefully everyone keeps as safe as possible. I'm not sure what the experience is going to be like for the media. I'm sure it's hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be not a problematic one. But yeah, just the atmosphere. It's another experience for this kind of young group of players, and I do think it will be a young group, because I would imagine with 3 wins under your belt in the competition, knowing that you've had this really intense, tough week, you've got Ipswich who will have had a completely free week coming to Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, just essentially 2.5 days after Spurs land back in the UK, because I don't think they'll be getting back to Spurs until Friday morning, really. You're going to have to make changes, isn't he? He's going to have to kind of bring some, I'd imagine some younger players start as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the one where you make quite a number of changes. You don't want to be taking chances on the likes of Sonny. Dom Solanke as well has played an awful lot of football at the minute. I'd be having him on the bench. Then if you need to bring him on for the last 20, 30 minutes or so, then you can do that.
Will Lancashire up front?
Yeah. I think he's got to be, just because Richarlison's out injured. The only other thing you could do is maybe Timo Werner through the middle. But then again, I think you're limited out wide at the moment. So for me, Werner starts on the wing. So very good against City the other night. Got a much needed goal as well. So yeah, I'd be going with Fraser Forster in goal. Again, I thought he performed very well against AZ. Made a couple of good saves as well. Then I think it's Dragusin, Davis, Archie Gray, and then one of Porro or a Doggy.
Yeah.
Midfield, it'd be Basuma, Madison, Bergval, Moore, and Werner either side of Will Lancashire. I think that's how I'd approach it anyway. Yeah,
I can't find any fault in that. I think you're right. I'm just trying to think. There's no one else really available, is there? I think you'll see some young, maybe a couple of extra academy players brought with on the bench, because you might have to leave. I don't know yet, but he might have to leave Romero back in the UK potentially. You got no Van der Ven, you got no Odebear. I'd be interested to see what he does with Sonny. Whether he gives Sonny a half and just says, right, here's a little bit more time kind of for you, or whether he is a little bit, continues to be even more careful with him and just brings him on maybe late in the game if they just to see it out, or if it's not going Spurs' way perhaps. But yeah, I'd go with Will Lancashire. I think he played in the first game, didn't he? And he put in a decent shift that day. Unfortunately, he could have got a couple of goals. So yeah, I think he probably would be trusted in this scenario, and I think it does give Solanke a rest which you need, because it's just like the mad efforts he's been putting in. More definitely, you want to start again, continue his experience. Werner, I think, has to start. So yeah, unless you're going to play Sonny through the middle, which is a bit of an intensive role, isn't it? I'd go with your team. Whether it's Porro or Doggy, probably Porro, because he didn't play, did he, in midweek against City? No. Whereas a Doggy had to come on, so probably fitness-wise, it would be Porro who'd be the fresher. But yeah, it's where do you stand on the whole Archie Gray as a fullback right now? I've seen differing opinions of him while I was away.
I'd like to see a bit more of him in central midfield because that's going to be his position in the long run. But look at the options in there at the moment. There's just not going to be any game time for him. And what he told me in the interview was he's 18 years old. It doesn't matter where he plays at the moment. Yeah. If he plays at right back, that's only going to help his game if he goes into central midfield in the long run, because then he knows what the central midfielder expects from the right back and vice versa. Yeah, he got skinned quite a few times against Nunes for City, but I thought it was a lot better in the second half. And talking to me next door neighbour, I think it was Saturday, about Archie Gray, because he always asked me how he's doing, and he was saying that happened quite a lot when he was at Leeds. First 25 minutes of games, he might struggle, but he learns from it. Yeah. And from there on, you know, he's very much on it. And
it's not Daniel Farker you live next to, is it?
No, it's not. No, but
I know you live in a posh area and all that.
I don't know, but yeah, I think it's only going to help him in the long run. Just the more minutes he's getting, and yeah, he's going to struggle at times, and very much a baptism of fire coming up against City with some quality players in there, even though they changed that a lot. He's 18 years old. You've got to remember that. And the more game time he gets, it's only going to help him in the long run. And even though probably he's going to be viewed as a central midfielder in the years ahead, the vast majority of football in the professional capacity anyway is come at right back.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I wanted to get your view because you were at the game. I was watching the City match on my phone while surprising and scaring an old guy on a bench in a Miami mall. I think I was at that one. I was sat there. Mrs. Gold was out doing some shopping. I was like, I'll just sit on this bench and watch the City game because it was the middle of the afternoon there. And yeah, you kind of regress, but you kind of go back to being more of a fan when you're watching it in that way. And I was like, I really kind of pumped my fist when Werner scored and then Sarr's lovely goal. And this poor old boy next to me, this American chap, he was like really like, what are you doing next to me? But yeah, my takeaway on Archie Gray was exactly that I felt he had a real challenge on his hands. You know, any fullback taking on a pacey, tricky winger is going to have that. But I actually felt as the game got on, he got better and better and better and really kind of rose to the challenge. And like you say, 18 years old, to be playing in these positions that are just not his natural position, it's all going to benefit him. I think we're seeing this with Sarr. Sarr at Metz played in so many different kind of midfield roles as anchorman, as a number 8, sometimes as a number 10. He was playing on the wings at occasions as well. And I think all of it does kind of grow your football brain into being able to operate in different areas and understand kind of where to be positionally wise, tactical intelligence as well. And I think Archie Gray's got all of that. And he is going to be just an incredible player. Just some of the moments, even as a right back, when you see him motor forward and get past players and down the pitch, and you just think, when you're in a central defense or in a central midfield role, you're going to be flying through challenges in the midfield. I think he's doing really well, and it's quite clever, really, that he's getting a lot of game time this season by filling in unusual roles, but it's all going to come to benefit him and Spurs, I think, for the long run.
Yeah, very much so. So Tottenham go into Thursday's game in the Europa League against Galatasaray in a really good position in the table, 3 wins from 3. As nice as it would be to get another win, if the draw, it's not the end of the world. I think it's just important that there's a bit of rotation this week, and Spurs are in a good position anyway. It's not like they're playing catch up already, but fingers crossed. I mean, whoever Spurs put out, there's going to be a strong 11 there at the moment when you had the likes of Basuma and Madison on the bench the other day. So yeah,
and Galatasaray are a good side. Yeah, they're not going to be any rollover there. You know, they haven't lost a single game, have they, in the Turkish league? They're top. By the way, did you see the Jose Mourinho stuff yesterday?
Yeah,
It was amazing. It just is an 8-minute rant about Turkish football, and video of him doing this knee slide where he ended up kind of falling forwards and tumbling. It's just, he is box office, he really is. But yeah, Fenerbahce are second to Galatasaray. I think they're 5 points ahead of them, I think, in the Turkish league. So, you know, you would presume they'll go quite strong for this game, Galatasaray. So it's not going to be an easy one. And I think it's one of those where I hope there's not kind of grumbling afterwards if Spurs were to draw or even lose the game. I think it's one of those games, not saying they're going to throw it or anything, but I definitely think if there's any game that's going to be slightly less importance placed on, it's probably going to be this game because of the start they've given themselves in the competition.
Yeah, just having a look at the 36-team Europa League table. Galatasaray, they're in the top 8, won 2, drawn 1 of the first 3. Got some notable players in there as well. Victor Osimhen, Maro Icardi,
Osimhen, of course.
Michy Batshuayi, Hakim Ziyech, Big Dav's there.
Big Dav, yeah. I can forget.
I think Serge is there still.
Is he still there?
I'll just have a look now.
Because when he first went, it was like a Spurs reunion, wasn't there, with Tongi there as well? Because he was a free agent, wasn't he?
I think he was there just till the end of the season.
Yeah, I had a feeling it might have been a short-term thing. But yeah, there's a lot of quality there. There is.
There is. So going to be a tough game as ever. You'll be able to keep with us at football.london for all the coverage. You'll be bringing us what Ange has to say in his pre-match press conference, and there'll also be a player speaking to the media as well on Wednesday. Right, we'll call it a day on today's latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. So thank you for tuning in, and just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.